Welcome to class. I'm Trevor, and I post D&D videos every week, generally on Wednesdays. In this video, I want to provide some homebrew stat blocks for goblins inspired by Magic the Gathering, as I'm wont to do. Let's jump into it. Okay, context first. If you've seen this channel at all before, you probably know that a lot of the inspiration that I have comes from Magic, and lately a lot of that inspiration has come from Lorwyn. It is my favorite Magic set, bar none. It's when I got back into the game, and it really means a lot to me for some strange reason. I also recently watched Spice 8 Rack's video, which I'll link somewhere, about goblins, and it's absolutely incredible. And it reminded me of how flavorful goblins are in Magic the Gathering, and how damn boring they are in 5e. I can't stand it. There's like 7, and probably even fewer goblins in 5e, and I'm not talking about goblinoids. I'm talking about like actual goblins. And it just feels like such a shame, because goblins can have so much more flavor. I'm going to share just one specific example of a flavor of goblin, which sounds gross. But I want to talk about that because I think that will open up a lot of different avenues. If everything goes according to plan, in addition to this video, this week there have also been shorts related to goblins, also Lorwyn Goblins, but goblins nevertheless. And I want to show how rich this type of creature can be, because there are plenty of other goblins out there, right? Like Ravnica has its own kind of goblins, and other fiction, there are other kinds of goblins. And I think that just what we have in the monster manual for 5e is really limited. And I think it matters so much because goblins are very often the first creatures that players encounter. Let's get into Lorwyn's Goblins. Lorwyn's Goblins are weird. They don't always follow the same stylistic approach in terms of their appearance. But there are some common traits associated with them. They live in these communities, and they're led by Wort, Boggart Auntie. And this is Wort. And I created a stat block for Wort, Boggart Auntie. You'll notice if you look through a lot of the cards in Lorwyn or Morningtide or Shadowmoor or Eventide related to goblins, there's a lot of regeneration that goes on. There's a lot of bringing goblins back from the dead, and I kind of tried to do that with Wort's stat block. So Wort gets Nimble Escape, as goblins are wont to do. And she also gets a ranged attack and a melee attack, but the extra special thing that Wort gets is called Boggart Family. And this means that as a reaction, if she sees a goblin or goblinoid die within 60 feet of her, she can bring them back to life. This is very powerful, but I don't have a problem with that. It matches what her card should do, and that is the goal, right? This is also a pretty common thing in video games, right? You have someone who's resurrecting creatures, and they don't deal a ton of damage, but the damage they deal is essentially the minions that they're resurrecting. And I think that this matches the flavor of Wort, Boggart Auntie, and it's something more that a goblin can do rather than just a goblin or a bugbear constantly swinging their scimitar or shooting arrows at you. I like it, and I think it's flavorful, and the goblins in Lorwyn are more innately magical, so I don't mind giving Wort this kind of ability, and it feels fitting for this character. Let's get into another example. Next, we have Quill-Slinger Boggart. Now, goblins in Lorwyn, not only are they magical, they're also kind of tricksters. And it's weird because it's kind of split between the goblins and the fairies in Lorwyn about which are more tricksters or which are more devious in their trickery. But Quill-Slinger Boggart is a goblin that is launching porcupines. And that's exactly what the stat block does. This goblin is more of a sneaky goblin with primarily ranged attacks, or based on the stat block, exclusively a ranged attack, and they are able to shoot porcupines at their targets. So much so that whether they hit or miss, a porcupine is in the space that is left behind. Now, this is strictly flavor. I'm not assuming that this porcupine would be entering the initiative or anything like that, but I just thought that it would be really fitting and very funny. Rather than just having a goblin that's shooting bolts or shooting arrows, they're actually shooting other creatures, and those creatures are alive. Obviously, this means they can be interacted with. They could be, thrown back, or they could be spoken to. And I think that adds another layer of fun and flavor, and it fits for the kind of goblin aesthetic that I'm going for with this homebrew. Let's get into the last example, and then I'll wrap this up. So the last creature that we have is Spiderwig Boggart. This card from Lorwyn gives a creature fear when it enters the battlefield, and who wouldn't be afraid of a goblin with literal spiders for hair? I decided to create that flavor by giving this goblin an aura that affects non-goblinoids, and it makes them roll a Constitution saving throw, and if they fail that save, then they are frightened and take psychic damage. I thought that this kind of got the same effect across. This goblin also does not fight with a weapon, it fights with its claws, and when this goblin is killed, the spiders are not, so it leaves a swarm of spiders behind. You as the DM could decide if that swarm of spiders is aggressive or what have you. I did decide to name the swarm of spiders. It says in the stat block that the spiders are named Maurice. I thought that that was just a funny addition to add to make this, again, a bit more whimsical. The goblins in Lorwyn seem to fit that flavor, so I wanted that to come across in the stat blocks to the best of my ability. So these are just some ideas for goblins, and like I said, if everything is going according to plan, there are some shorts throughout this week that are also giving some more ideas for goblins. I really like this. I think that this is fun and flavorful, and like I said earlier, I think it's important. Goblins are seen a lot in D&D games. I know I've used them in a lot of my early campaign sessions. I actually went out of my way to not do that in my most recent campaign. And I think because of that, they kind of deserve to be represented in ways that are not just the goblins in the stat blocks in the monster manual. If you have any ideas for fun goblins, please drop them in the comments down below. I'd love to see them. I know there are plenty of ideas out there, and I wish that there were more that were published. So I think if we share them, it can certainly help. If you like this video or like more D&D or D&D and Magic the Gathering content, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and as I always say, be safe. Make smart life choices.